Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every week, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts. My guest today is an author, instructor, and martial artist who spent 17 years working in the correctional system, including 10 as a sergeant. Assignments included booking, maximum security, disciplinary, and administrative segregation. He was a CERT member for 11 years. His training has included over 800 hours of tactical training, witness protection, and close quarters handgun training. He has designed and taught courses in Confrontational Simulations, Uncontrolled Environments, Crisis Communications, and more. In 2008, he left his agency to spend over a year in Iraq with the Dept of Justice as a civilian advisor to the Iraqi Corrections System. He has a bachelor's degree in psychology and is the founder of Chiron Training. Please welcome my guest today, Mr. Rory Miller. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. How did you get through all that without breathing?
Years of radio. I can usually do about a 30-second commercial in one take. When it goes beyond that, I usually have to take a few breaks and edit stuff together. When I was younger, I could probably do 60 without a break, but 30 is usually pretty solid.
That was amazing. I don't know, but for everyone listening, that whole thing was just one long breath. That was crazy.
Yeah, as like I said, I try to get through it. A few of my intros are longer than others, and I do have to take a breath in there, but yeah, most of them I try to get through in one take. It sounds better that way. So, but I truly appreciate your time. I'm glad we're doing this, and I can't wait to hear more about your story. So, kind of how we kick things off with all my guests, I want to go back to the very beginning. I want to know where that first spark came from, that first interest, and what kind of led to launching your martial arts journey.
Oh, wow. I had more opportunity than I took advantage of, in the sense that my dad had been a Golden Gloves boxer.
Cool.
My mom had fencing, and I didn't give a shit about any of that. I just wanted to be left alone and read books. We moved when I was 11 to a place that was so remote. My graduating class had 6 people in it.
Wow.
And it was a lot of farm boy work, a lot of ranch work, good physically. The school was so small that I played varsity football before I was 5 foot tall or 100 pounds.
Wow.
I was very small as a kid, but if I didn't go out, we didn't have enough to make a team. We played 8-man football, and you needed 9 people register on the team before you'd be allowed to play. So I was the only one that was only on the defense team. Everyone else played both. As you can imagine, I got my ass kicked thoroughly a lot. But I think that would be good for almost every martial artist or person that wants to be martial art, because you take solid hits and you have to stick to the plan and you have to get back up, get back in the game. And football, American football or rugby are like the 2 best sports for making that a habit. So for a small redneck school, there's a lot of bullying, but I found out at one point that giving into my rage was the antidote to that. But that had consequences too. And I actually got into martial arts when I went to college, and I started college at 17 because someone told me it would help me control my temper.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, it was kind of like I got into it not because I was bullied, because I would caught myself turning into the bully.
Oh.
And I didn't like where that was going. I didn't like who I was becoming.
Okay.
And I lucked into judo, which I still think is probably the best foundational martial art. And I had a couple of extraordinary instructors. The advisor, the guy who was actually a college professor, who was a coach. Wolfgang Dill had been on the West German national team. And Mike Moore, who was the actual, captain of the team and the primary instructor, had been a junior national champion. And it was just incredibly hard work. The thing I loved about judo, as opposed to anything else, it is all fitness and physics. Mm-hmm. That's where I started.
So, how long did you train with that specific group of people in judo?
I trained as long as I was in college,
okay.
and I was on the team. And that's not as big deal as it sounds like. It's not like you have to compete to be on the team. If you show up, you're on the team.
Okay.
So there was a break because I was on the pay for it myself plan. So I stayed in college for until I ran out of money, and then I'd go work for a year. and come back and work for a year and come back. So chronologically, it covered about 10 years. And when I wasn't there, I was doing training other places.
Okay.
So it just, that time is, we talked offline before.
Mm-hmm.
But by that time, it was an addiction. It wasn't, I would wake up. If I didn't feel sore, I'd feel guilty.
Yep.
So I dabbled in everything else that was available in that place. But it was just dabbling. The judo was my, kind of like my first girlfriend.
Okay.
Never forget.
So did you get involved in the competition side of it at that time or no?
Yeah, I was on the college team. So yeah.
Okay. So being on the team, you had to compete then, or because you said you didn't have to. So I mean, did you want to compete?
I didn't like competing, but it was important. And
okay.
And that's one of the things that goes with a lot of things in martial arts and life and everything, or your job is like, if every job was perfect, as fun as the thing you truly love, they wouldn't have to pay you to be there. You'd volunteer.
Right.
Almost everyone, whatever part of the martial art that they most despise is probably the part that they most need. It's the guy, I don't want to do kata. It's probably what you need so you can calm yourself the fuck down.
Yep.
For me, I loved sparring. I loved randori. I loved every aspect of going head to head. The thing that always bothered me about competition was the audience.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't fighting for other people's entertainment, especially people I despised. And this is one of those, the people that, whatever, if you're watching UFC, but you aren't training, it's like, who the fuck are you? The people that don't have the guts to do it, but still want to sit on the sidelines and kibitz, I had absolute contempt for.
Okay.
The judges that, that judges that hadn't been on a mat in 20 years, but wanted to tell you what you did wrong. Nothing but contempt. I was super arrogant. I was such a dick. It's really hard for me to, I was not a good person.
Okay.
But at the same time, that being able to tune out the audience and to tune out the judge and to just focus with what I was doing was something I absolutely needed.
Okay. So what are some things you remember, maybe like your first couple classes? You got to college, you found the judo class. Once you got into it, what was it about it, those first few classes, that made you want to stick with it and keep going?
The two, and one was actually several months later.
Okay.
But in the first day, and I don't want to sound, this could sound super stupid, but one of the things I remember as a kid was I loved it when my dad threw me in the air.
Mm-hmm.
I would get sad knowing that someday I'm going to be too big for him to do this.
Yep.
And the first time I got whipped over in a fast shoulder throw, it's like, oh my God, I can still get thrown in the air.
That's cool.
It was the best part of my childhood. It was like, and that was about the time the Superman movie came out with You'll Believe Man Can Fly.
Yep.
And that was judo. I can fly.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And the second one was, and this is so rare, you'd think with all the years and all the training that this would fade and there'd be hundreds of these by now. But the first time I got a perfect throw on someone seriously didn't want me to, fighting as hard as he could, and this effortless seonagi. And this guy, and he outranked me. I was a white belt. He was a brown belt, about 25 or 30 pounds heavier than I was. And just like magic, just exactly the way it's supposed to be. And that was, that's a feeling I've been chasing ever since.
That's awesome. Now, did you get involved into teaching when you were doing that, or did that come much later?
Much later. I never wanted to be a teacher. So
okay.
It's too much responsibility for me. I mean, when you're teaching, you're actually taking on the responsibility for re-engineering another human being. And it's like, I don't have the right to do that.
Okay.
But it was purely selfish, and it wasn't out judo, because I transferred to classical jiu-jitsu when we moved up to Portland, and I was looking for a judo school.
Okay.
And there was and I've told the story enough that I feel weird telling it again, but there was a place that advertised karate, judo, jiu-jitsu. And it turned out that it was basically saying that real jiu-jitsu, judo, karate, and aikido each took a third of the curriculum and polished it till they felt safe. Mm-hmm. And that's not technically true, but that's a longer talk.
Yeah.
But it was a classical Sosushitsu jiu-jitsu school. I went in, and it was because, as all young, arrogant, stupid judo people know, jiu-jitsu is just primitive judo or judo. And that's when I still tease the BJJ guys with, doesn't BJJ stand for basically just judo? Nice. But anyway, I went in there, and it was, they were playing really hard. They were playing some games. The instructor was Dave Sumner. He was one of those people that liked people so much they kind of glowed, and he didn't let you know how good he was. And I can tell you stories about that. But at first it's like, well, I guess I'll try it since there's no real judo close enough. And first week he taught me 3 entirely new concepts to throwing. not 3 new throws, but 3 entirely different ways to put someone on the ground that I hadn't gotten in all my judo. But the thing that I loved most about his particular style of jiu-jitsu was, he called it jiu-jitsu randori.
Mm-hmm.
Basically infighting. It was, you got chest to chest, chest to back, or chest to side, and then you had to control contact, but no holds barred, whatever you can do. And it changes your relationship to time. You find out that often offense and defense were never supposed to be separated. You are controlling structure as your primary defense, so your offense is your defense. And throwing and locking and striking and headbutts and strangling and locks are all blended into one thing. It was the most fun and the best training I've ever had for integrating your skills. And then when he retired, there was, the school kind of broke up and everyone scattered. And there was no one around I could find who could play the game I wanted to play at the level I needed to play it.
Okay.
And so the only reason I started teaching any martial art was to make playmates for myself.
Oh.
Yeah.
So then were you teaching what he taught you, or were you blending that with the judo you had already learned and kind of already starting to create your own system? Or
Jiu-Jitsu was one of the jiu-jitsu groups that came together with Kano to help work out the curriculum for judo.
Okay.
So the judo was already incorporated.
Oh, nice. Okay.
It's just so much easier to throw somebody right after you've broken their knee or given them a concussion. It's just not in that kind of blending. So I was teaching the essence, the core, pretty much the way he taught me. I'd been working the jails for a while at that time.
Okay.
So that got a little more informed, and I was also still working out the emotional side, because that's one of the things that people don't get is when it's real blood or a serious injury, or when someone's trying to kill you, that the feeling is entirely different.
Right.
And while it was a fad, and I'm sure it's still around, but I don't spend as much time on the internet about, well, what about active resistance? Like, active resistance is cool, but if you haven't experienced murderous resistance, then someone that focuses on active resistance is just as ignorant as a person that focuses on no resistance.
Okay.
There's a huge difference between someone trying not to let you punch him and someone actively trying to kill you. I tried to work out the psychological part too, and that's what actually became the first book, Meditations.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was what led to you wanting to write? Was it someone else's idea? Had you always had the thought to do it? I know you said you were an avid reader when you were younger.
I was a reader. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be a writer, but like a science fiction writer, because that sounded so cool. And then once I get involved, I involved meaning, can't remember, is it the military and then the sheriff's office were, but somewhere in there, I just couldn't stomach fiction anymore.
Okay.
Because what I was doing was what they were trying to write about, and they were wrong about almost everything. And I got incredibly frustrated with fiction. I didn't want to write anymore. The Meditations actually started because I had a really bad year. And there's that whole essence of that baggage essay in Meditations on Violence. All that shit happened in 1 year.
Wow.
And up to that point, I never take anything home. I was incredibly psychologically robust. And then I just got tired. And I was with my wife, and there was a nursery going out of business, and she loves her plants. And we went in there. It was about, I don't know, maybe 4:00 in the afternoon. There's a sign saying, "Take anything you want, leave the money here. I'll be back at 2." It's like, it's already 4. And I go, "Oh, fuck, he probably hung himself in the back." I said it out loud, and Cammie said, "Yeah, you should go check." And my initial, and it was so fast, only someone that knew me as well as her would have seen the micro expression. But that for the first time, the thing that flashed across my head was, no, it's somebody else's fucking turn. And anyway, so I was poking at this stuff in my head that wasn't settling. And I started writing to get it out of my head so I could poke at it externally instead of internally. And are you familiar with Makamono?
No.
Okay, so some of the old traditions, when you get your teaching instructor, you'd also get a scroll of the secrets.
Okay.
And so I originally wrote meditation. Well, I originally wrote it for therapy, but part of it was also, it was something that if I ever promoted someone to black belt, I planned to give it to them as my Makamono. This is stuff I can't teach in a class.
Okay.
It's not the whole thing, but it's a taste of it. And I sent it to a couple of friends, and Chris Wilder sent it to his publisher. So my first book was accidental.
Wow. Yeah. Chris has actually been on the show. He's a good guy.
He is. We spent a couple, the Judo Nationals were in Spokane, I think 3 weeks ago.
Oh,
and we spent together watching him and talking and go over his notes from his instructor.
Okay. And obviously the first book, I mean, you said it was it was kind of accidental, but it was also successful. And then was it the same thing that made you want to keep writing? How many books have you written? I was trying to count on this.
I don't know. It's so the first book was accidental. The second was basically okay. So the first book was the questions. What are my best shots at the answers?
Okay.
That's how almost all of them happened. Is like I don't like what's out there, or there's nothing out there. The last one, living in the deep brain. I woke up one morning with this idea for an article. Let's get all our friends together, right? What do you do to actively train your intuition? And it's like, so I started writing a little quote unquote article on how I train my intuition. And I wrote, 35,000 words in 5 days.
Wow.
It just came pouring out. So a lot of it is either my subconscious kicking stuff up, or the one I'm working on now. I don't like any of the situational awareness material out there.
Mm-hmm.
I need to something needs to get out there so that other people can make it better.
Okay. Of all the books you've written, if you're someone who's never read one of your books, what's the best intro one to get to know Rory? Learn about you and your writing style, and hopefully get them hooked to read them all after that.
You phrase that question very differently.
Okay.
So phrasing it like that, in order to get to know me, meditations, that is a psychic vomit of everything that's on the inside.
Okay.
Yeah.
I might have to order that one myself. I know that's been recommended to me.
And facing violence is possibly the most useful for self-defense.
Okay.
So, because it's, again, the meditations has a lot of the questions, but facing is trying to get a start on the answers.
Nice. All right. So then you did the judo, you did the classic jujitsu, and you said in between the 10 years of judo, you tried other styles. What are some of the other styles you dabbled in and trained in?
Dabbled in everything that was available. So there's Shitoryu karate, Tang Sudo, like you.
Nice.
And that was also one of my best instructors. There were a couple of eclectic made up stuff. Let's see, I never got into Aikido, did do some Wing Chun. Oh God, what else? Arnis and a whole bunch of variations of that. Salat, white crane salat.
Nice.
Yeah. And it's in a whole bunch of sword and weapon fighting and guns.
Okay.
So
very cool. And then, so at any point, did you ever actually open your own school? And you said you started teaching, so you could, train people to basically play the way you wanted to play. Did you actually have your own school, or were you doing like seminars? How were you doing that? I
had a friend that had a school, and he had hours that were available. So I would just open school for his hours.
Okay.
Or for that available. I don't know if that sentence made sense, but
yeah, no, that makes sense.
But that's how I started, and then had a small group going, and that was incredibly frustrating because working for the sheriff's office, I was not on the same shift any 2 years in a row.
Oh wow!
So I was on day shift. I think I've only been on day shift 2 years in my career.
Ew.
Those were the only times where you could do an evening class, and when I was on graveyard, I was doing a 9 p.m. class and a 8:30 in the morning class.
Okay.
I was double hitting it. But, I was changing shift every year. The students weren't. So every year I was starting over.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It made it super frustrating because just at the point the students were starting to get interesting and challenging, start over with a new group. And I got so tired of doing the basics over again.
Yeah. I get that. That makes sense. So think back to then. Think back to that very first time teaching to now. You still do seminars and stuff. What do you think has changed the most of your teaching style over the years? The shift, as I got to understand the principles better, I could teach from the principles better. So if I still have my notes around here about some of my early classes and my class plans, and it's all technique driven. Okay. Yeah, you have to learn how to do this. You have to learn how to. And now we start with playing a game with contact, and then okay, let's step out and look on this body mechanic. Let's step out and see if we can improve this movement. Let's step out and see if we can look at targeting, and just keeping it back to the game. And I'm getting people better in a weekend seminar than I used to when I was working on for 4 or 5 months. Wow. So what led to Chiron Training? What led to starting that, and just talk a little bit about that and what it does and what its mission is. Okay. So I came back from Iraq, and I decided I never wanted to work for a government again. And again, not because anything, bad or corrupt or horrific happened. Although there was the horrific was the way that bureaucracies pencil whip things. That absolutely doesn't matter what you do. It matters what you write down. Yep. And so if you write down things you never did, you get all the awards and all the accolades as if you actually did it. It was just I'd never been that deep into bullshit before. And same one of the reasons why it was easy to go to Iraq, because I had finally moved up in the sheriff's office at the point that I was
seeing how some of the decisions were made, and it wasn't based on what I thought it should be. And so I came back really disillusioned. And I can rant about why forever, but I don't want to turn off half your audience. But I'm not, the only things I'm really good at are only legal if you're doing them for a government.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
Right. If I knock you down and handcuff you and throw you in the back of a van and I'm not working up, that's a super bad thing.
Yeah.
So the only really career path left was teaching. And between the teaching and the writing, it seemed to work out. You started this question with a really specific thing that I feel like I'm missing. Oh, Chiron has it just the only half human that's teaching other people how to be heroes really resonated with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So then is this, do you actually have like a training center for this, or is it primarily just seminars? You're traveling around, you're doing seminars?
I travel and do seminars, and
Okay.
I want to say I'm retired from that, but I plan to retire in 2020, which was super coincidental because that's when COVID hit, and that would have done anyway as a business. But no, traveling, it's the whole thing with lineages is weird for me. There's a guy named George Ledyard who lives close to me, but I've never met. And he wrote this article that blew my mind about when are you going to decide to be amazing? And the essence of the essay was that when you put your instructor on a pedestal, that becomes your excuse not to exceed him. And if I can't make you better than me, I'm a shitty teacher. And if you think your instructor is so amazing that you can never be better than him, you're calling him a shitty teacher. And this whole lineage thing becomes toxic really quickly. So I was really, I don't like handing out certificates. I don't want to certify people in what I do because they can never be me. I can help them be better them probably. And that makes more sense to me. Okay. The thing we're used to in traditional martial arts always strikes me as a super toxic Japanese family. There can only be one patriarch. Only one can move up once the patriarch dies. Any disloyalty is considered, or any change of attitude or learning new information is considered disloyalty and is punished. And that's just a really fucked up way to make effective people.
Yep.
But, if we do it like a strong classical American family, I'm your dad, I'll always be your dad. You go in the family business, that's cool. You go into your own business, that's cool. I'll support you in any way that I can. That just seems a much better model. But in that case, Chiron Training or Dept training or whatever will always be its own particular little world. And that's the way it should be.
And about how often do you do the seminar? Like if someone wanted to come to one, how often are they if they wanted to try to find one and get to it? Like
I said, I've officially retired,
right?
But I still have real tough time saying no to friends.
Okay.
So we'll be in Minnesota doing BioDye in October. Was it June? Second weekend next month, I'll be in Boise. It's basically if Tammy calls me in DC, I'll go in there and do something for her people. And
okay.
It's still going to happen. But, in 2018 and 2019, I was doing 37 a year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And that's, so far I've done like 22 countries but only like 25 states.
Okay.
I still have states I haven't been to.
So now it's more like maybe you'll do 3 or 4 a year if it's a friend that wants you to do it. So
if I get bored. And we also, the one regular thing I'm doing here is we have a lab every month.
Oh, okay.
And local instructors and anyone's invited, but we just get together and what are you working on? What's your mystery? Last time I talked to Chris, he talked about some Okinawan internal arts body mechanics that were very counterintuitive. So that's what we were playing with last time.
Nice.
You know how you structure strike, usually goes rear leg up through spine, out your fist.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Hero was able to structure from the front foot through a curve out your fist.
Okay.
And I know ways to structure circular strikes, but that was new to me. And playing with it, that is super interesting and gives a really interesting snap to the punch. Still not even close to having it, but that's the kind of stuff we talk about at the lab. Yeah.
Nice. Just curious now with your all your training and instructional stuff and more realistic type combat, what are your thoughts on something like MMA and the UFC? And is that something you're a fan of?
I'm not a big fan of sports.
Okay.
I enjoyed the first couple of UFCs because it was really good at weeding the bullshit out.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things is every time, as you become more commercial, there will have to be more rules and you'll have to adapt to the rules.
Right.
right? So MMA has become its own system, whatever you want to call it. It is its own thing now, but it's still in its infancy. So on the good, I think that all young men are driven to find some way that they can test themselves. And I think that MMA is as far as anyone in the world in all of history has ever gotten with that. Relatively safely, it's complicated enough that they have to work strategy as well as the physical skills. I'm kind of mixed on that because if you have a lot of tools, it takes a lot of strategy. But if you have only one tool, that takes a lot of strategy too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect sense.
Yeah. Why they call sportsmen strategists was because when you got one tool that's your offense and defense, you have to think really deeply. So I think MMA is really good for that. Yeah. But when people try to extrapolate it to other things, that's always dangerous. Because it's not self-defense. You know who you're going to meet and what they're allowed to do and how many there are. It doesn't mean that some of the tools won't cross over, but the strategy and the mindset are different. At every point where anyone in MMA has tapped out, that's the point where self-defense would start. And tapping out wouldn't be an option.
So I was looking on your site here. It looks like you've also done some instructional videos too. You got a handful of those that are available through, it looks like Amazon and stuff.
Yeah, YMA had me, they were my publisher for my first book, and they had me do a couple.
Okay.
And I'm very weird about video because I think that any physical fighting, for want of a better word, is a very tactile skill.
Right.
And you have to learn it by touch. You can get ideas from video, but you still have to go out and play with it with somebody.
Yes.
You've heard about modalities of instruction, right? Okay. One of my rules now, and this is a horrible bias and I should feel ashamed, is when anyone tells me they're a visual learner, I automatically think, oh, you mean you want to sit on your ass and watch YouTube? Yeah, the idea that you've seen something or you've read something and you get it, that can only apply to things where you have a lot of time and no adrenaline to work it out.
Yeah.
You can read how to fix your water heater and then go down and tinker with it. But if you think that you can read how to defend yourself from a tiger chewing on your head, and you're going to remember that when a tiger's chewing on your head, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah. Oh, you did a video with Lawrence Kane, another former guest of the show.
Yeah, sort of. Lawrence couldn't actually make it. So he did because we filmed it in Boston.
Okay.
And let's see, I can't remember where we filmed that because the infighting one we did in this dingy bar where we're like our feet are sticking to the floor. It was awesome.
Okay.
I think the one with the material for Lawrence was, I can't remember where we filmed it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check some of those out. That's interesting. I was trying to remember because I know we've been trying to schedule this for a while. I was trying to remember who actually recommended you to me, and I found the email. It was actually Dana Sheets, another former guest. Yeah, she's the one who actually told me that I should get you on the show. So thank you, Dana. Yeah, she was fun to interview, man. She was really cool to talk to.
Yeah, she is smart as hell.
All right, who are maybe 3, 4, 5 names you would put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts?
People you never heard of.
That's even better. Oh, a lot of people have done that. I've had quite a few where they mention people I've never heard of. So
Dave Sumner.
Okay.
He's my jiu-jitsu instructor. He was, I say pound for pound because he was small, but some of the people he took out. Okay. So he's a maybe 5'6" jiu-jitsu guy. We have a 6'3" guy come in who is a straight up world full contact Taekwondo champ.
Oh, wow.
And Dave took him out using nothing but Taekwondo.
Nice.
And that was the kind he was that good. And so I'll tell you the story again, not a fresh story, but I was young, arrogant judoka joining this jiu-jitsu school, which is everyone knows is subpar judo. And they didn't let me spar for about 2 weeks. And I'd studied, because I'd already done the Taekwondo and the Shitoryu, so I was competent. And this was also a phase where I was going to different schools I was a dick, to spar with the instructor to see if they were worthy to study with. Okay. So I'm sparring with Dave, and he's just a little bit better than me. And so I'm, we bow out and I'm walking away and thinking, yeah, I'll stay for a while. He's got some stuff he can teach me. And then one of the junior instructors, junior being, lower rank, asks to spar, and he's a black belt. Much lower rank than Dave, but he's old, probably about 5 years younger than I am now.
Okay.
But he's just this lantern-jawed, crippled up, arthritis in the hands, those cow knuckles from hitting macawaras.
Oh, yeah.
But just this, a lot of stuff I didn't notice till later. And he toyed with me. I'd like to say he destroyed me, but he didn't have enough respect to destroy me.
Okay.
He toyed with me. And at one point he said, 11 moves in, you're going to try to back fist me, and I'm going to take you down. And he did. And I didn't realize till much later he wasn't playing chess. He set it up. And I walk away from that one, I bow out and I've got the nice smile on my face and I'm fuming. It's like, this guy's fucking amazing. Why isn't he teaching this class? And then I look over and he's sparring Dave, and Dave is just a little bit better than he was. Mm. And I stayed with Dave, I think, for 11 years. And all that time until towards the very end where I was pretty much holding my own, no matter who he sparred, no matter how good they were, he was just a little bit better, just enough to really make them reach to be better themselves.
Nice.
And I don't know a handful of instructors that can hold that level of awareness. And so Dave would be up there on Mount Rushmore.
Okay.
Paul McRedmond, we call Mac. He's got his own system called Bastante. He's just out of his garage. There are people you have heard of that he outranks in their own system. And he was working with the sheriff's office when I was the young buck when he was a silverback.
Okay.
So he was an incredible mentor, and he's an incredible martial artist. And there are very few big guys that are good, because most people just get good enough to beat the people around them. Mm-hmm. But he was dedicated to being superb, and he is. His technical skill is just off the charts. Yeah. And he's got, and now, of course, like all this, he's getting super old, and no one knows how to get old well.
Yeah.
There's this whole circle around Uchirai karate mm-hmm. that, I couldn't put them all up there, but I couldn't put any individual up there either, because they kind of made each other.
Okay.
So just two names come to mind: Jim Maloney and George Mattson. And it's basically George created Jim and Van Cannon and a bunch of other people that were big in the 70s. And George himself is just a consummate strategist.
Okay.
And very dedicated. Jim is officially, he's a Micmac war chief. He did handle the Queen's security when she was on tribal lands. He's just competitive boxer, fierce boxing coach, and karate right down to his core. But you see especially him, and this is one of the things. A lot of these, the saying about lion tracks. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's his students are the things that really blow me away. When Bridget can't get a professional boxing gig because the Canadian champion, her weight class, won't go anywhere near her.
Nice.
That's pretty spectacular.
Yeah. So what advice would you give someone who's never done martial arts in their life, and they want to try it, and it's like, one or two tips? Hey, what should I look for in an instructor or a school, and maybe one or two things I should avoid?
The first question I'd always ask is, why do you want to do it? If you want to do it for fitness, it's different than if you want to do it for self-defense. It's different than if you want to do it for championships. So that's the kind of the first filter, So number one, I would say, is go look at the students and see if they're happy. If they're miserable, if they're picking on each other, if the dynamic's bad, you don't need to be there. There's no good to you doing psychological damage so that you can prevent yourself from physical damage later. Recognize that there's a huge difference between training and weeding out. I could easily make a school so tough that only tough people can survive, and I have really tough people, but I'm not making them tough. I'm just finding the tough ones and kicking everybody else out.
Right.
And that's not teaching. The ones that would filter out, that would be kicked out, are the ones that generally need it most. I'm not, I'm not a big fan of like Taekwondo for self-defense, but it is like the funnest game of high-speed tag that anyone has ever invented. It's freaking fun. Have fun doing it. The one that you'll stick with is more important than the one that might be the best for what you think.
Right.
If it's not making your life better, don't do it. If you're about self-defense, one of the things I look for is how many cops are long-term members of the class.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't look at the instructor so much as I look at the students, how well they move, because a lot of instructors are old and crippled up, but that doesn't mean that they can't be good coaches. The two things that I look for, which I've talked to people that do commercial schools, and they said any commercial school that has the two things I look for will go out of business. But there's a certain smell that is a combination of sweat and excited adrenaline, not fear adrenaline. That's a different smell. And I love a canvas bag with little brown dots on it.
Okay.
Canvas heavy bag. It's little brown dots. And I know you know this, but
oh yeah,
yeah. But if you hit a heavy canvas bag and you don't hit it just right, you're going to bleed.
Yep.
And when your canvas bag has a bunch of brown dots on it, people bled on it.
Yep.
Yes. And all you got to do to prevent it is hit it right. Not that hard.
Exactly.
So let's see. Any other advice? Know what you want. Don't be afraid to quit. And I don't mean quit because it got tough, because that you've got to work through. But it's like, martial arts, and especially self-defense, can become super toxic. There are people that want 15-year-old girls to bow to them and call them master, and they're attracted to become martial arts instructors. Predators go where the prey is.
Yep.
A lot of people that gone to self-defense have been victims before, and they fall into the victim mold. And when you've got an instructor that wants to be a little bit of a predator, anyway, the dynamic can be super toxic. So this is one of those. If anything creepy happens, get out. Don't do the boiling frog thing. Recognize when you're being tested and don't acquiesce to the test. No one has a right, even if they are your instructor, no one has a right to touch you without your permission. That whole list of things doesn't change just because you're in this environment.
All right. In all your years of martial arts, is there one philosophy you've learned that is super important to you? It's at the top of your list. You keep coming back to it.
Yeah. And it wasn't, there's a bunch of stuff in martial arts, but the one that I think is central, and I'll have to walk it out a little bit. Mm-hmm. But when Ron Bishop, when I was sworn in as a deputy, Ron Bishop handed me the badge and shook my hand. And he said something to everyone down the line. I don't know if he said the same thing to everybody or it was special. But when he handed me the badge, he said, once you pin this on, you're never allowed to lose. And it's when you're fighting for other people, you are never allowed to lose. When you're fighting for what's right, you are never allowed to lose.
That's cool. All right. I got a few fun ones to wrap it up. Now, this first one, you can't pick one of yours. Do you have a favorite martial arts book?
Yes. E.G., but Bartlett's Judo and Self-Defense.
Okay.
It's one of the first I picked up, and judo was really big in Britain. He's a British guy. I know nothing about him except for this, but it's set up as everything you need to know to get to black belt in 100 lessons. And the reason that I loved it is because the descriptions are clear, but at the end of each technique, he has this thing, points to watch and connection is spelled with an X, to this throw or to this hold. And every time I was having trouble with it, and I grabbed that book down, whatever I was having trouble with was right there in his points to watch.
Okay.
It was just a super clear, super simple. I like that one a lot.
Okay. All right. This one you might not have an answer for. It kind of depends, but do you have a favorite martial arts video game? Were you ever into video games at all?
I was never really into the video games that I got into were first person shooters.
Okay.
And I kind of topped out at Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
Nice.
Yeah, and but I was spending all day at work not killing some people that desperately need to kill him.
Okay, I get that. Yeah, see, and all my kids played games, but not, we have like a Nintendo Wii, and I played Wii bowling probably 10 years ago. That's the last time I used our video game system. So, yeah, in the 90s, I did like Mortal Kombat, I did Street Fighter, I did things like that, but yeah, not recently, other than like, solitaire on my phone probably when I'm bored.
I was older. Sometimes in the morning, my wife put Minecraft on our computer, and that's about the right mix of building, exploring, killing zombies. So
nice. How about a favorite martial arts TV show?
Okay, in a lot of ways, it's terrible. And again, for Christmas, my wife got me Martial Law with Sammo Hung.
I love that show.
It was the thing that now after this is realizing that there's no way that all the American gangsters would fight with the same Chinese opera style as the protagonist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is funny.
And Super Blast from the Past, Wild Wild West.
Oh, yes. Yes, the original, yep.
I am convinced there's one scene where he puts a piton in a gun, and I went and checked the date, and he did that before James Bond did it in Diamonds Are Forever.
Really?
And there's a scene where he's surrounded by people, I think they're a Chinese Tong or whatever, and he's using his karate to fight them off. And that is so close to the scene in Enter the Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Enter the Dragon.
Yep.
That I think that Bruce Lee cribbed that scene.
Really?
I think that West was Bruce Lee before there's Bruce Lee, James Bond before there's James Bond. It's steampunk before there was steampunk.
That's awesome.
It's doesn't really qualify as a martial arts TV series maybe, but I liked it.
Hey, we'll count it.
Into the Badlands for modern.
I love that show. Yeah. Yes. I wish it would have had one more season. I wanted one more season, but yeah, some amazing choreography, amazing sword work. Yeah, that's a fun show.
Yeah.
Have you watched the new show Warrior?
No.
You might enjoy that. It's I don't know if you were ever a Bruce Lee fan, but it was his daughter Shannon's involved in the show, and it was actually created from his original notes for the show Kung Fu before they basically stole Kung Fu and changed it and took it away from Bruce. This is what Kung Fu was supposed to be. It's a really good show.
Cool. Warrior.
Yeah. Warrior. What's it on? Is it might be Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, but I think it might be Amazon. It's one of the ones I don't actually have, so I have to watch it when I'm with friends and stuff. But I think it's a second or third season now. So, but it's really good.
Nice.
How about a favorite martial arts movie?
The Last Dragon, hands down, best martial arts movie ever made.
Nice. I'm trying to get Timac on my show.
Why not continue making movies? He moved so well, and he moved better than any martial artist I'd ever seen on film, for sure.
If I'm not mistaken, he did like the stage play of Roadhouse, and he played the Patrick Swayze character. I'm almost positive I read that somewhere. Yeah, like I saw a picture of him like in a blonde wig and everything.
That unnecessary.
Yeah, that's one of those ones. That's one of the ones I haven't watched with my daughter yet. Me and my daughter, the last 2 years, have gone through this whole 80s rabbit hole and watched all these classic 80s, 90s movies and everything. And that's one I've been telling her we have to watch one of these times. So one of these days, I think Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon will probably be next on our list, and introduce her to Bruce Leroy and the Shogun of Harlem. So
yeah, sure enough.
That's awesome. Okay. Now this one would be really interesting with your background and more realistic stuff. I'm curious. It doesn't have to be a martial arts movie, just a favorite movie fight scene.
Oh man.
And anything goes. I've had from Marvel and Star Wars to The Princess Bride to Bruce Lee, Bourne Identity, anything in between.
The Princess Bride is super fun.
Yep.
I'm drawing blank on names today. This is well, not today. I've had a bunch of concussions. Are always hard.
Okay.
Now I'll be embarrassed if I can't remember his name.
What's the show? I can probably maybe.
It's a show. It is a friend of mine has done in the duel in the Princess Bride. They're talking about all these fencing masters that have written books.
Okay.
Have you studied your Capoeira? And one of my friends has actually he's read all those books. He teaches HEMA.
Oh wow.
A video on what that fight would actually look like if they were actually imitating the people they said they were imitating.
Nice.
It's super nerd stuff. It's not nearly a spectacular fight. It's just for sword nerds are the only people that would care.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think, is there a fight scene because a lot of times the fight scene is the part you can walk away from because you know how it's going to go.
Right.
And a lot of them are the ones that made me throw there's one scene in almost every movie where to show how tough it is, the guy doesn't call for backup and he goes in and takes out 5 or 6 people.
Yep.
And that drives me up the wall because no one does dangerous things alone if they have a choice.
Yeah.
If you did that, then they would claim that you attacked them. And since you won, that's like 90% likely to be true. And you'd be up on charges. The very fact that you didn't call for backup if you were caught means that you knew you were doing something wrong. You didn't want witnesses.
Yep.
So let's see. One that I think about a lot, there's a scene in one of the early NYPD Blues.
Oh, okay.
Where there's a guys, one of the cops has taken enough steroids, is affecting his brain, and the other low-key detective, the redheaded one, can't remember the name, and the guy takes a shot at him and just gets dropped. And it just a sweep is really elegant, and that's nice. That's what it should look like. If someone tries to take you out, they should fall and not even know how it happened.
Right.
And there's another one, not Yojimbo, I think Senjuro Zagata.
Okay.
But where he does the left-handed draw with the wakizashi and disembowels the other guy before the guy has even started his attack.
I remember that. Okay.
Yeah, that one is elegant. And there's one scene in there's another Mifune movie called Redbeard.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I can't recommend the movie because I was bored to tears because it's mostly about an apothecary and his apprentice. But there is one scene where he fights. There's only one fight scene in the whole movie. But every move in there I recognize from classical jiu-jitsu.
Really?
And it's not pretty or elegant or choreographed. It looks sloppy and brutal.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's actually kind of cool. I was going to ask I like asking other martial artists this when you're watching a movie fight scene. Can you actually enjoy them, or are you trying to pick it apart?
One of the reasons I have a trouble reading fiction, but I like the movies as ridiculous as possible.
Okay.
It's like Into the Badlands is wire work.
Yes.
And it's gorgeous because it doesn't have any bearing on reality.
Yeah.
The same John Wick, I hated for about the first hour and a half. And when they brought in the Intercontinental, I realized it was a fantasy movie. And it's a fantastic fantasy movie. It's a terrible action adventure movie.
Yep.
And so, yeah, a lot of that, if I manage my own perspective, it's okay.
Okay. And I'm one who I can do both. I mean, if I need to pick it apart, I can, but I I go to movies to get lost and have fun. That's why I like Cobra Kai. I don't like Cobra Kai because the martial arts was realistic. I like it because Karate Kid was the reason I got into martial arts, and it's just this big nostalgia trip for me. So I love it because of that. I realize it's not. I mean, it's funny how literally everyone on that show gets a black belt level in like 4 months. So.
And I like Cobra Kai and sometimes the writers bobble it.
Yeah.
But because it's all about character growth arcs.
Yes.
And I like watching that. And the Ralph Macchio character in there is the one that's the biggest dummy, the most immature, the one that's not learning. His wife is actually the smartest person on the entire show.
Yeah. That's the one I watch with she's hooked on it too, my daughter, and we watch that whenever the new season comes out. We binge it, and my other friend actually takes his kids out of school so they can stay home and watch Cobra Kai. I'm like, I'm not quite like that with my daughter, but
I'd be going a little too far.
Yeah, I know. So Rory, before I let you go, anything that maybe I forgot to ask you about that you want to make sure we get out there? Any last minute parting words you want to leave with, or? Not
really. It's your audience better than I do. Normally, I just try to remind people that life is to be lived, live hard.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that as I'm basically retired and living on my mountain, doing as little as possible, that sounds kind of like bullshit now. But
yeah, but you lived hard for a long time though. So
I did. It's like, I was at physical therapy today, and he's going over what my shoulders can't do and what my knees can't do. And
I just got my wrist x-rayed today and scheduled an MRI. So I'm hoping if I can get to your thing in October, I'm hoping I'm healed by then. And I can actually come down and meet you. We'll see. It's been a rough few months.
That would be fun because it's a good group. I think you'll enjoy them.
Even if I'm not healed up, maybe I'll come down just to meet you in person and say hi, and that'd be fun too. And possibly, recruit some more guests for the show. So
it'll be fun. We've got this safety rules. Just talking about that is one of the things that goes into the safety briefing whenever I do a class is because there's normally a point where is anyone having injuries I need to know about. And realistically, if you've been training for a list of time, we'd be there all day listing all, and no one could remember them. So one of the things that we really emphasize is play with the body you have. Yeah. If you got a breeze, if you're tiny, if you're old and you can't take, you got bone cancer and you can't take impact. Cool. That's part of your strategic landscape now. So we've designed games specifically to play with that.
That's cool.
So you could be in there and decide to use your cast as a weapon.
I like that because, I've, like my current, traditional martial arts instructor, when I go to class, he knows, he's like, what current injuries do you have? What can you do? He's like, don't push it. He's like, I'd rather have you at half speed now than lose you for 6 months because you pushed it too hard. Because he knows I want to go all in, and he'll knock me down a few notches and be like, you work with the white belts, you do this, I want you to survive. So, I like if you wouldn't do that at the beginning, I wouldn't say anything. I would just go in there full bore, and I'd probably walk out limping and in pain and worse the next day.
We're focused on self-defense. So how does it serve you in self-defense if you're too injured using the stuff you learned?
Exactly. Cool. Well, hopefully it'll work out, but I want to thank you for this. This has been a lot of fun. I know we've been trying to get it for a while, and I already ordered your first book. I definitely want to check that one out and make time to read it. And I'll probably be ordering more over the next few months, but I will put links for your books and anything else you need me to when the episode comes out. As of now, I'm a little over a month ahead. Your episode is scheduled to come out on July 20th. So
cool. So that's a workaholic. Nice. Good work ethic.
It is. June's a nice month for me because my kids are all busy. So I have free time. So I'm just this is my 4th interview in 3 days, and I'm going to try to schedule at least 4 or 5 more before the end of June. I'm hoping to have my summer taken care of by the end of June with all my interviews and all my episodes ready to go. So we'll see if I actually pull it off, but I got to get more people to reply to me and say yes, but I already sent Tammy an email, and I sent George Mattson an email, some names you gave me, and I'll reach out to a few more of the people you mentioned and stuff. And
one of the old dragons, he brought a system to the US.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Like I said, I want as many different people, different backgrounds, more variety. I mean, like I said, I've had UFC fighters. I've had, point tournament fighters. I've had, instructors. I've had motivational speakers, stand-up comedians that do martial arts. I mean, any kind of background you can think of, professional stunt people. It's like, I want the variety and I want the more backgrounds and more. I've had NFL Hall of Famers on my show, so it's, stars of TV shows and movies. So it's everything in between. It's I want the variety. And if someone has a cool story to tell and they're willing to, if you know more people, feel free to send them my way, because I'm willing to talk to them.
Excellent, Brian.
But once again, I truly appreciate your time. It's been an honor having you on the show, and I can't wait to get the episode ready.
All right. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.